I was gonna try to film this without her, but she's a little fussy this morning and her dad had night shift, so I'm taking the morning shift. Something that I get asked a lot is, why did she come so early? Is she okay? And am I okay? She's fine. She's full term now and she's 7 pounds and I'm doing really good as well. So a little bit about why she came early, and then I'll get more in depth into it. I was diagnosed with preeclampsia and HELLP syndrome. Both of them are very rare health conditions. Preeclampsia affects about 200,000 women a year. Oh, yeah. And HELLP syndrome affects 20,000 women a year. So very rare and dangerous, life-threatening conditions. Okay. I think we got her quiet. So yes, very, they were like life-threatening conditions. When I was about 28 weeks pregnant, I realized that I had gone from about 160 pounds to 200 pounds in like 2 weeks. And so I called my OB and I was like, there's just no way that this is possible. I ended up being diagnosed with preeclampsia, mild preeclampsia, and the only way that I would have gone in, the only reason I went in was because I knew that it was impossible for me to have gained that much weight that quickly. And sure enough, it was just a lot of water retention and I had some protein in the urine. So I was hospitalized on and off for that. And then we ended up going to our baby shower in Fort Walton because my mom is stationed in Eglin and his mom lives in Pensacola. So we went to that, and then I had some really bad swelling. Like I said, at this point I was 200 pounds just from all the excessive water rate.
What is that?
It's an
Gosh, that's weird.
The morning of Thanksgiving, I noticed my blood pressure was very high because the only way that they were going to let me go to Florida from where we're stationed in Illinois was if I promised to get a at-home cuff and check my blood pressure all the time. So the morning of Thanksgiving, my blood pressure was 185 over 115. I ended up going to the hospital. They put me on magnesium because when you're at that point, you can have a seizure. I was transported to Sacred Heart in Pensacola, and the plan was to get me to 34 weeks. I was hospitalized for about 2 weeks, and then they came in and my condition was getting worse. I was on blood pressure medicine to help keep that down. I had all kinds of medicines that I was on, but at this point I had developed HELLP syndrome, which, like I said, is very rare. About 20,000 women a year get HELLP syndrome. What that is basically your red blood cells are no longer regenerating, your platelets are dropping, and your high liver enzymes, basically your liver's failing. So they came in on Monday night and told me that I was going to have to be induced because my platelets were halving themselves. Your platelets are what causes your blood to clot. So at this point, I wasn't clotting. I had gone from 146,000 for platelets to about 90,000 in one day. So because of this, I was not allowed to have an epidural. I had to do it naturally because my blood wasn't clotting, so I couldn't have the medicine. At this point, I was 29 and 6. So on Tuesday, the day that I actually had her, I was 31 weeks exactly. I was 30 and 6. So when I had her, I was 31 exactly. So I labored for about 22 hours naturally. I, first of all, could not dilate because I couldn't dilate past 5. Also, I caught an infection from my water being broken. And then at one point, we both went into distress. I spiked a fever of 103 from the infection. So I got really bad shakes, very, very bad shakes. And then the doctors came in, the room filled with doctors, and basically they said that they were going to have to slide something on top of her head because they couldn't find her heartbeat anymore. So kind of gross, but they reached inside of me and slid a monitor on her head so that we could see her heart rate. About 30 minutes later, like I said, we both went into distress. So doctors came in and said that they were going to have to do an emergency C-section, which I was very afraid of because this whole time they're telling me, you know, my blood's not clotting. So they had taken blood and then a couple hours later came to take blood again and it was still bleeding. It never clotted. So the risk that we were running was that I would bleed out on the table. So it was very frightening. At this point, we weren't sure if I was going to make it out of the C-section. Everyone was kind of scared because this whole time the doctors were saying that it would not be good if I went in for a C-section. They warned that they might have to take my uterus if they couldn't stop the bleeding. A bunch of doctors came in and I had to be put completely under. I could not be awake when I had her at all because I couldn't have I had to have general anesthesia because of the blood clotting. I had to have transfusions before they could perform the surgery because I had I had lost so much blood and my platelets weren't, I didn't have any platelets pretty much. When I delivered her, I had 30,000 platelets, which is very, very, very low. So she was born at 7:06 on December 10th. Her due date was February 11th, so she was 2 months early. After I had her, I had to go to the ICU and stay the night there. I didn't get to see her the first night. Well, the first like 36 hours of her life, I didn't get to see her. I had to go to the ICU to recover because my condition was so bad. They had to monitor me very closely. I was still at risk for seizures, so they had me on magnesium and I had to be on that for 24 hours. So I couldn't see her until I was off of that. So the big thing with HELLP syndrome, I had a lot of pitting edema. I'll insert a video of that because it's pretty gross. You have to ignore how hairy my legs are because remember I was hospitalized and like couldn't reach them. After I had her, I was in the hospital for a while and then it was fine. And then she was in the NICU for about a month and she was discharged. But with HELLP syndrome, one of the main things that you need to worry about is 1, bleeding out because your blood's not clotting. 2, your liver's failing. So I did have liver failure until I delivered her. And then with preeclampsia, you have the fear of seizures because your blood pressure gets so high. So because my condition occurred so early, it happened like as soon as I hit my 3rd trimester, and because it developed so quickly, I was diagnosed and delivered within 3 weeks. And because it got so bad, by the time I delivered, I was like knocking on death's door. They said that it's like a 95% minimal chance that if I got pregnant again, I would have the same condition. Of course, science is always coming up with new things, so I'll just wait and see what happens in 3 years, and that'll determine if I have more. Go. So yeah, that is what happened. I didn't get into a lot of the nitty-gritty details just because it's very personal, but I did want to raise awareness to preeclampsia and HELLP syndrome because it is very rare. Doctors don't know what causes it. They don't know how to prevent it. And it can be very life-threatening, especially if it gets as bad as mine did. I had never even heard of either of those. No one in my family had ever heard of preeclampsia or HELLP syndrome. So that just kind of tells you how rare it is and how severe it can be and it can get, because one day I was fine and the next I wasn't. So if you are pregnant and you're experiencing some crazy swelling, rapid weight gain, any pain in your upper quadrants in your stomach, make sure that you talk to your OB, because I probably would not have gone to get help as soon as I did if I just hadn't stepped on the scale one day and saw that I had gained like 40 pounds in 2 weeks. So yeah, take care of yourselves and make sure you guys look out for that because it is very dangerous. But just wanted to keep you guys update it and let you guys know what happened because everyone's been asking. Like I said, she's fine. She's double her birth weight since she was born 3'11". She's like 7'2" now, so she's good. Oh, and I wanted to say that after I had her, within a week, I had lost all of that water weight. Well, not a week, probably about 2 weeks. I had lost all the water weight, so I had gone back to my pre-pregnancy weight. So that just tells you how crazy it was that I was just retaining that much water. But all right, guys, let me know what else you guys want to see, and I will film it. All right, bye.